evening, and welcome to A Journey in Boots from Trauma to Triumph. I'm your co host, Dorothy O'Dell. I'm founder of the Unstoppable Overcomers Productions and veteran first responder ally. Please meet my amazing co host, Dr. J. Royster, who is a founder of Semper Modus, which is Latin for always moving. This lady is always on the move. Each week, we bring you inspiring stories for those who have walked through fire from trauma and emerged stronger and turning their pain into power. Join us as we explore their journey from struggle to success. And today's guest is no stranger to that. So, Dr. J, I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
All right.
I spent all week with this man. He's amazing. Tell us a little bit about him, though.
All right. So, Lieutenant Tim O'Brien is from the Lake County Sheriff's Department. He has had his career there for 18 years. He has worked in several different units, always ranking up, of course, because that's what our guys do. They rank up here from road patrol to the canine service, warrants unit, and the School of Resource unit, just to name a few. In addition to his regular duties, Lieutenant O'Brien has served the agency as a member of the Bomb Squad team commander. That's kick-ass. I don't know about you, but I don't know much about these ranks, but that sounds pretty badass. SWAT team breacher and grenader. Ooh, does that mean he throws grenades? Awesome. I want to learn more about that. Lieutenant O'Brien obtained his bomb technician designation from the FBI bomb school in Alabama in 2009. He is the certified national emergency medical responder and also the current member of the Sheriff's Office Critical Incident Stress Management Team. Welcome to the show, sir. That is quite impressive.
Thank you.
Now, have you ever had to throw a grenade? I got to ask that question.
So it's actually, I did in the military, but it's called grenadier. And basically what we do is our job is to lob gas into a house, or we use a 40 millimeter less lethal rounds that we would deploy on a subject. So it's a different kind of like a education and class that we would go through for the SWAT guys. So each person has like a designated job. So yeah.
Have you ever had to do that?
I have deployed gas into a house, yes. And I have not had the opportunity to hit anybody with the less lethal round, but I've seen it done. So it's very effective. Yeah.
Wow. Sorry. I'm just on the CSI, the scenes of CSI, and so now we have a real life CSI agent right here.
Right. Absolutely.
Sorry, just a little bit of fangirl here going on. Sorry, Tim.
Well, we'll hear all about it. Tim has some pretty amazing stories. My first question to you, sir, is where did you grow up and what was that like?
I grew up in Charlestown, which is a small section of Boston, predominantly Irish Catholic neighborhood. I'm one of 9. I'm the youngest boy. I have a twin sister who is the baby of the family. Even though if you ask my brothers and sisters, they'll all say that I'm my mom's baby, which I'm proud of to say, even at my age. But yeah, it was different growing up in Charlestown. It was one day you might be fighting your friend, the next day you're playing hockey and football with them. So it was good. Everybody knew everybody. So you couldn't walk through the town without knowing somebody. And if you did something, if your family, mom and dad didn't know, your older brothers and sisters found out before you got home. So it was very interesting growing up.
So what inspired you to pursue a career in service, of all things?
So growing up, my dad was Army. My brother was a Marine. I wanted to go in the Coast Guard. I ended up going into the Navy. I spent 5 years as a construction electrician in the Seabees. We joke around with the Marines and call that the big boys section of the Navy, because we actually deployed with the Marines. I spent 7 months in Guam. We did stuff for SEAL Team 10 that was over there. We built their camp up, replaced some of the buildings that were tearing down over there. So it was an interesting career. I deployed to Zagreb, Croatia in 94. I've been to Spain. I spent 7 months in Guam. The best probably memory that I have in there is I spent 7 months in Camp David when President Clinton was in office, building an addition to a racquetball court that was up there at Camp David. So seeing that where the presidents go all the way back from Ronald Reagan on, I mean, even back before then, but that was amazing. That was probably one of the best deployments that I had.
That's very cool. My best friend, actually, Sabrina Johnson, shout out to you. She's a licensed professional counselor, and she works for Semper Modus as well. But she was a Navy Seabee for 13 years.
Yeah, love it.
You guys probably crossed paths.
Yeah, I didn't want to get out. My goal was to spend 20 years in there and then get out to do something. I have a lot of family members on my mom and dad's side that were Boston firefighters. So growing up, that was my dream job. I wanted to be a firefighter for Boston. But when I went into the military and then met a bunch of Marines who were MPs when we were over in Zagreb, my swing was towards law enforcement at that time because I wanted to serve the community. I ended up moving to Florida when I got out in 97, and I've been here since. I still did electrical work when I first got down because I met a couple people and they were like, oh, you got to be a cage kicker and go work in the jail before you go to road. I didn't want to do that. Ended up meeting an Orange County deputy who I'm still friends with today. He's a sergeant over at the Orange County Courthouse. I did some ride-alongs with him, and I was hooked. Took a road trip to Boston with my wife to go see family at Christmas, and we had a long discussion on the way up. And on the way back, I signed up for the academy, and since 2006, I've been in law enforcement, and I love it. I wouldn't change anything.
I love that.
That's amazing. So what were some of the toughest obstacles on your journey? I mean, 18 years being a lieutenant, like it sounds like you progressed very quickly.
Yeah, my biggest goal was when I got hired, I wanted to be a canine deputy. I thought that was like the best job that like anybody could have. And everybody that I talked to said, you know, when you're a canine deputy, you're doing something and getting paid for something that you love to do. And watching those animals work. I used to go on my own time to canine trainings just to prove to them how interested I was in it. But it took me 4.5 years, and I finally got onto the unit. I had my canine partner, Eric, and man, it was amazing. It was a great 5.5 year journey with him. But the difficult time was getting into these specialty units, you know, because there's only so many slots, and you're fighting against other people who may have been here longer or maybe better qualified. And so that was the challenge of doing that. So, and after that, it was just a matter of, you know, I took the test for promotion and had made corporal right off on my first try.
Wow.
And then it kind of promoted me out of the canine unit, which, you know, at the beginning, you're kind of like, man, I shouldn't have did it because you were doing something that you love to do.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to make an impact on the deputies and have that ability to have that supervisor role and lead those guys. And that has been a great journey, because as you become a supervisor and you start molding some of these younger deputies and seeing them and what they can do, that was great. And then, of course, as a corporal, I went into back to road patrol. And then I went into the fugitive unit, which is the warrants unit. I was in there for just underneath a year before I promoted to sergeant, and again, promoted myself out of a good specialty unit back out to the road. So I spent a little over 2 years back on the road as a sergeant down in Sector 3, which is the south end of the county of Lake. And the challenging part at that part was dealing more with the complaints from the citizens that were coming in. You know, certain calls we have to go to. We're mandated to, so going to there and making sure that your guys go home every night. You know, that's another challenge. So at that point, I got promoted. I got moved into the school resource unit. And I've been in 5 years now. I was a sergeant in there, and I got promoted to lieutenant, and they actually let me take over the unit, which was a great thing for me because it was a privilege. That's one thing that keeps the sheriff up at night, is the schools and the safety of it. And it's been a journey, because we have, as a team of supervisors, we have made some changes. Supervisors that were in there before to the supervisors that I have now. I have a great core of supervisors that take care of me. So it has been a great challenge, and it's been sometimes an uphill battle. You know, as a supervisor, and as you go up, it becomes lonely because you make decisions that other people are not going to be happy with.
Yes.
So, yeah. And at the same time, you're trying to balance that. That level of staying on the ground and in the trenches with the troops, but you also can't get caught in the weeds of it. So as I became a lieutenant, I also realized that it's more of an administrator than it is a police officer on the street, because I'm making more decisions as a whole for the sheriff's office and not just looking out for the core group of guys. Now I think there's 38 of us in this unit now, which is the largest single unit at the sheriff's office.
Wow. You've been involved in some things that most officers either look forward to or dread. Would you like to speak about those two events?
Yeah. So back in 2015, I was a corporal back then. I was getting ready to head up to Leesburg Bike Fest to take over the command side of the bomb detachment that was assigned up there when a call came out for a trespass. I had to collect paperwork before I went up, so I wasn't actually going to go to the call. I was going to meet the deputy to get the paperwork, but I decided to go with him to this call because there was limited information and it was on the way anyways. And the deputy is a friend of mine. So I was like, you know what, Jackie, I'll go with you. We'll take care of this. I'll collect the paperwork and then I'll head up to Leesburg. We arrived on scene. And I would say within it was less than 2 minutes and it was complete chaos. I ended up shooting the guy. But this was, the guy was a 50-something-year-old male. He was at his mom and dad's house. He threatened his stepdad that he was going to kill him. Mom and them going back and forth for a few hours. Dad leaves the house, calls dispatch, having us go there. Didn't say anything about the information that the guy was, telling them that somebody was going to die today. We get there, and as soon as the mom opens up the door, I instantly realized that it was a little bit more. My hair in the back of my neck started standing up because he was laying across the love seat in the living room, just staring at us. And the mom would not take her eyes off him. She wouldn't even look at us. And she was like, "Can you just make him leave? He won't leave." That was all she said to us. So, of course, I'm thinking, all right, so we have an older guy. He's probably having a bad day. We go in there and I start to try to engage him in a verbal conversation. And he instantly jumps up in a football stance with a knife in his hand. And he's like, "I'm going to kill you." At that point, we're like, both of us drew our weapons. We're like, "Sir, drop the knife. This doesn't have to end this way. We'll get you, if you're having a bad day, we'll get you some help." And the next thing he's like, "No, somebody's going to die." And we were like, "Nobody needs to die." At that time, my partner, Jackie, reholstered his weapon, pulled out his taser, and started giving the guy commands even more of like, "Hey, drop the knife. We'll get you help. We don't need to go down this road." And me as keeping the lethal cover, I made a decision because we're only less than 8 feet away from this guy at this point. When we walked up to him, we kind of backed up a little bit off the rug area in the living room. And the guy at that point was like, "Nope, I'm going to kill you." And he would not look at Jackie. He was totally focused on me. So me and him were staring back at each other. I let Jackie do all the verbal commands so he wasn't confused. So only one person was talking. And it was a calm conversation. And at that point, Jackie was like, deployed his taser. And I'm talking about, it was like Matrix. And you see the two probes slowly go through the air. I seen it make contact. Taser's going off the 5-second cycle. He literally falls back on the love seat. He launches himself right back up. And he was like, "Motherfucker, I'm going to kill you." And he starts running this. At that time, I shot him. He instantly falls. He wouldn't drop the knife. Jackie went over and kicked the knife out of his hand. We instantly went into first aid mode. Jackie ran out and got his first aid kit. I ripped open his shirt, seen where the wounds were. I was holding pressure. He comes in. We start giving CPR. Of course, while all this was going on, the radio traffic for me, I actually hit my man down button because I didn't want to take my hands off my gun and talk on the radio. I just hit the man down button. Dispatch is trying to call us. They give us emergency traffic. So we have deputies en route to us. Groveland PD was en route to us, which is a good tool to have. The other thing was when we hit our man down button, we have control of the radio. So now I don't have to worry about talking over somebody or hitting a button if I need something.
Right.
At that point, I just came up and was like, "Lake, shots fired, need EMS." They started coming there. They instantly removed me and Jackie from the scene when fire department came in. At that point, they declared him deceased. He was on a bunch of narcotics. This is when the detectives started talking. This is all after fact of that they start talking to the stepdad and mom, and he had been suicidal all morning. He kept telling them that somebody was going to die or he was going to die that day. And you look back and you try to play Monday morning quarterback and say, hey, I wish that information was provided, because I would have never stepped into that house. I would have pulled her out and we would have had a conversation at the door.
Right.
Not realizing. I was just thinking it was a veteran that was in crisis. We can go in and have a conversation because we do this all the time with them. And that was not the case. So I was put on administrative leave for about a little over 3 weeks before I was cleared to come back. I come back, and it was 2.5 months later. Once again, I'm the supervisor that was on duty, and I had control of the shift at that time on that sector. Call comes out that there is a home invasion in progress. And so the 2 deputies that are with me instantly leave and start heading to the call. I leave the call that we're on, get in my car, and I start heading down 50, not realizing that the stress of everything going on with the call takers and the dispatch coming over with the information that the person who's calling in is saying that there's people inside the house beating up her brother. They can't get out of the bedroom. Somebody's holding the door. Her 3 kids or 2 kids, I forget the number. They were in the living room. And so they were separated from the parents and in between where the uncle was getting beat up in his bedroom at the other end of the trailer. Now, I'll go back and say that every home invasion that we ever have, that I've ever dealt with, is usually over with prior to us getting there, because normally what happens, and I'm not being stereotype of this, is that they usually get if no drugs or money is taken from the bad guys that are robbing the bad guy, they usually remove that stuff because they know we're going to get a search warrant and search the house and seize everything.
Right.
That was going through my head too. But then as we were coming through Mascot, I was actually the front deputy. Somehow I got in front of the 2 deputies that had left prior to me. They dispatched come over and said, hey, by the way, we're still landline. We can hear stuff in the background. And the caller is giving more information saying they're still in the house. At that point, I was like, oh, man, this is going to be it. We're rolling up into a hot call. I still actually had my police dog because he was still working. The other deputy that was going through canine school, so they still had my dog in service. I was like thinking like, oh, man, I'm going to get a dog bite tonight because they're going to run and it's going to be on. Not in my wildest dreams that I realized that my life was going to take a complete 180. I roll up. First guy comes out of the house. He's wearing a mask. He's got something in his hand. I don't see it. I stay behind the engine block of my car, the Tahoe. I start giving it, get on the ground. He jumps a fence, and I instantly look back over to the house to the right, and I see the second guy come out. He's in a mask with a pistol in his hand. He looks at me and immediately takes off running the opposite direction. The deputy who was behind me in the mascot unit had went around that side of the house. So I start yelling across the yard to the deputy saying, hey, you got one coming with you and he's got a pistol. I start running. The homeowner who I recognized, I called him by his name and said, hey, get everybody out of the house as I'm running by. And he's like, they don't went that way. So in my head, everybody's out all the bad guys are out. I instantly get halfway across the yard and realize like, hey, I better not leave the crime scene, and I'll just bring everybody back. We'll clear the house, get my dog on the ground, and we'll go to work. So I start walking back, and the victim, the other victim, the drug dealer, the bad guy, is covered in blood. He's just standing on the ground beside the door with his brother-in-law. And as I'm talking to the brother-in-law, I'm like, hey, so-and-so, get everybody out of the house. And next thing you know, as I came around the cars, the wife is in the doorway and she's yelling in Spanish. And I'm like, ma'am, I holstered my gun and I'm like, ma'am, just get the kids and come out of the house. And she was like, no, you don't understand. There's still one in here. Like everything went Matrix again. Mm-hmm. And as I look up, she's gone. There's a guy standing there with an SKS rifle with a banana clip, pointing it towards her with a mask on. And I'm like, oh shit. Like, so I instantly start yelling out, sheriff's office, as I'm drawing my pistol. He swings the rifle back towards me, and I start shooting from the hip as I'm punching out. I take 2 steps back to try to get to the engine block of the pickup truck that was there. He actually presses me with the rifle. At this point, my training starts kicking in and saying, listen, you're going to get shot, but you need to put him down. Stop moving and pressing him. I then transition. My mindset is that I'm probably going to die. But I need to take him with me. So I start pressing him, and now I'm shooting rounds from a 45 pistol. I just dropped a guy 2.5 months before with 2 rounds. I know I'm hitting him, and this kid is not dropping. And instantly thought of like, oh shit, he's wearing a vest or something. The other deputy at this time is coming around the house. He hears the gunfire going off as he clears the trees. I'm shooting. He starts shooting. Well, in slow motion, I'm 6 feet away from the guy that has the SKS rifle. He slowly transitions the rifle sideways, and I see his thumb start to go to take the safety off the rifle. And I couldn't figure out, I was like, this is afterwards, like, why the hell did it take him so long to get the safety off, you know? But he's also holding a bag over his arm. The bag later on was filled with money and drugs that they just stole from the drug dealer in the house. And 2 of my rounds actually hit the bag. Know that afterwards, right? So when Mike actually starts shooting, one of his rounds, because he's like really not holding onto the rifle that good, hits the buttstock of the rifle, and the rifle spins around out of his hands and falls onto the ground. At this time, like, I still fire a couple more rounds at him because everything's chaos. This is all slow motion, like Matrix. He instantly drops the bag and he starts running, and he runs about 30 yards away towards my truck. At this time, I'm starting to hit my bailout button for the dog to come to me to go after him, not realizing I was in a spare canine vehicle that night, and my bailout button is not transitioned because I'm like, why is my dog coming? Why is my dog coming? And I'm yelling at him, get on the ground. My dog's going to fuck you up. He's going to bite you. And he ends up walking on the other side of the front of my Tahoe. And me and Mike Devine jump on him. We handcuff him. And as soon as we roll him over and I lift up the mask, like, there's nothing there. I check his pulse. There's none. I'm like, okay, obviously my round's connected. There's nothing I can do. I still have 2 guys on the ground. I instantly get back up on the radio. I'm like, Lake, shots fired. I got 2 on the ground. I start giving out information. Other units are already coming to us. We start setting up a perimeter. We lock pretty much that area down pretty good. The first guy that got over the fence, he actually got out of the perimeter before I could lock down. Claremont Police, Groveland come up on the radio, like, Tim, what do you need? I'm like, send me what you got. Like, all the other deputies from the north end were coming to me. Sumter County was coming. We had such a good perimeter set up that we actually caught the second subject that came out about 9 hours later. He was still in the perimeter. He couldn't get out. So which was good, because like, now that kind of set the trail of these guys. The kid that I ended up killing was a 20-year-old kid. He a couple of weeks before then, I actually did a traffic stop, and all 3 of the suspects were in a car with another kid. And I didn't know this until the detectives told me afterwards who it was. But yeah, that was 2.5 months. I fired my weapon twice and ended up killing 2 people. And it was my life did a 180.
Yeah. How did you reconcile all that? Because that's a lot. And I know
a lot to process.
it seriously affected you.
Oh yeah, it affected me. It affected my wife. You know, like, we have this persona like, hey, I don't need help. I'm going to tuck it in, put it in this file cabinet, tuck it away. You know, we have to go talk to somebody to get cleared to go to work. We went and talked to this guy. I went and talked to this guy, and he was like, how do you feel? I'm like, after the first one, I'm like, good. And he's like, you know, you think you can go back to work? And I'm like, well, yeah. And he goes, all right, I'm going to have you talk to this therapist. We're going to do a couple sessions, and I'm going to clear you to go back to work. And, you know, 3.5 weeks later, I'm back to work. This time I go back to him, and he's like, why are you here again? And I'm like, well, doc, I just killed another guy in a call. And he's like, what? And so we talked for about 15 minutes, and he's like, all right, I'm going to let you talk to so-and-so. And then when you're done, after a couple of sessions, I'll sign off on you and you can go back to work. I was probably off for almost 2 months at that time. Didn't realize that I was suppressing everything that was going on. You know, we have a form now that we use for officer-involved shootings, and you're talking about what emotions, physical, everything that you go by. And I didn't know for about 2.5, 3 years that I could have started checking those boxes right away, because I ended up with insomnia. I was taking medication to try to sleep. I was taking melatonin and I always say this wrong. You doc help me out. Trazodone.
Trazodone.
Trazodone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was taking 50 milligrams of trazodone, and I was taking anywhere from 24 to 27 milligrams of melatonin at night. And I still was only sleeping 2 hours. Didn't think anything of it because for me, I was like, oh, it's like we're on night shift, day shift, night shift, day shift. This is just my body reacting. It was probably like, that was in 2015. 2017, we start going to trial. We start doing suppression hearings, depots. I start reliving everything again from 2 years ago. And again, my world of everything that I suppressed in this file cabinet now is like popping out. And now you're thinking about other calls. Like, as a supervisor, we have to go to suicides. Not too long after that, while the middle of the trial was going on, we responded to a 12-year-old who ended up shooting herself in the head because she didn't get all A's. For me, I was like watching my guys who were the first on the scene go through this. You can see it on their face. And I'm like, man, this is like, we're human. We have to react. We have to be emotional. I was telling them, hey, man, let it out, So the trials come. The second dude who came out ends up taking a plea deal. So we didn't have to go through the whole trial. And that was just before the trial was supposed to start. Well, then the next guy who fled, by the way, he got caught up in South Carolina after doing 2 more home invasions up there in this 1 month period while he was running from us. The U.S. Marshals and our detectives, who were amazing, ended up tracking him down up to South Carolina. So they brought him back, and we started to go through trial again. And I actually had to sit on the stand in front of people and relive this again a little over 2 years later. So you talk about trying to suppress stuff and then reliving it and trying to suppress it. And then 2018, the sheriff's office had an award ceremony, and me and the deputies who responded to both calls ended up getting an award for it. We probably saved those family members by us arriving. Those kids were traumatized because they listened to their uncle get beat. And my wife reminded me, she was like, man, you're a hero. You saved somebody that night or in the future, because these guys, how brutal they were and didn't care that those kids were inside the house and doing what they were doing, was the other part of that rock that she was trying to like, hey, don't let this define you. Make sure that you remember that you saved lives that night. Even the other guy, he could have stabbed his stepdad, not to say it's one of those things. So I started spiraling out of control in 2018. Hypervigilant. I stopped going into crowds. I would not go out. I wouldn't let my wife go to the grocery store with me because I was seeing people. I thought like everybody was looking at me like, oh, that's the guy. And that was going on during the time frame too of the trials and stuff because my name was out there. We actually had a call and we arrested this guy, and his dad on a recorded line asked his son. He was like, hey, was Sergeant O'Brien there? Because you got to be careful with that guy. He's trigger happy. And the detectives called me and said, hey, do you know this guy? And I said, no. And they showed me a picture. All phone calls are recorded. That just added to my hypervigilance. Like, I don't even know this guy. Even though all that stuff was put out into the news of what ended up happening, here's this guy saying oh, he's just trigger happy. Man, I was hoping to go through 25 years of my career and not ever have to fire my gun unless I was at training.
It sounds like you were accurate, not trigger happy.
Right. And the part of I would not be standing here if I was not aggressive in the Stucky Loop shooting, because if that kid got that safety off of that gun, our vests are not made to stop 7.62 rounds. Those are military rounds. I know from the military, when I shot the M60, that's what we fired. And I know the damage that those rounds could do. So for me, that was the other thought in my head is man, why? I couldn't believe that he couldn't get the safety off. And this curveball got thrown on the last trial 3 weeks before we were starting trial. The state attorney's office guy calls me and he said, hey, Tim, how you doing? I was like, good, Rich. How's everything? He's like, I just want to give you a heads up that new information came up and it's going to come up into the trial. And I was like, okay, what is it? And he said, hey, that rifle that the family members were kept saying that wasn't operational, even though the FDLE said that it was a fully functional SKS. They actually stole it from the drug dealer that night at the house. And that's why he couldn't operate it. Talk about a mind It's like, I was like, holy cow. So it kind of put some things in perspective of me reliving certain things. Killing a 20-year-old kid that's doing a home invasion. That was not my choice. That was that night. That was his choice. I was going home, but he's younger than my own son. So that affected me too. You don't want to kill a kid, but at the end of the day, that's the decision that kid made. So I started, my wife reached out to my friends. They came down and had a really good stern talk with me. And my wife was the same way, because she didn't know what to do. Like, wives of police officers, they like, how do we deal with PTSD? My wife's in the medical side of it. She's not used to the mental health. And then all of a sudden she's reaching out to people, what do I do? And they're like, get them help, make them go talk to somebody. So we did. I had to learn how to communicate back with her. I had to go back through, and I'm not embarrassed to say this, I went through marriage counseling with her so that we could learn to communicate. And I cannot use the word I'm good, because for me, if I use that word, she knows something's wrong. So like, we had to communicate, like, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, my anxiety's up, I don't feel like going out in public because I'm not feeling it today. And the same thing, I had to listen to her, because I'm not the only one going through this. She's actually going through this with us too. So it was a mutual thing. And I went back through counseling. I was actually at one point seeing 4 different counselors for different things. And then I met an amazing
whatever it takes.
And
the other thing, reframing that, yes, you took the death of you took the life of a 20-year-old individual. However, how many lives did you save?
Probably a lot.
Because he would have continued he would continue on that path. Yeah. But the other thing, like, when we talk to officers or service members, there's 3 things that they are not allowed to respond with, because I'll dig. I pull out the shovel and everything. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm okay. Because I'm like, are you? Like.
Yeah, like the other day when we were talking,
Yeah.
This week has been the last 2 weeks has been a roller coaster for our sheriff's office. So yeah.
Yeah. And I've been there the whole time.
You've been
You're
amazing.
more than welcome to talk about whatever you want with regards to what's happening, our current events, but I don't want to get you in trouble either.
No,
because I can't talk about anything, but you can.
Yeah, I won't get into detail, but so I'll just back up just a little bit. So that walking into this, the SISM team for the sheriff's office reached out. I went to a SISM debrief with them. After talking to those guys, our chaplain at one point was the lead person running it. I realized that all those boxes that I'm checking off, I could have checked off years ago. And I wish that, it wasn't just that I was dragging feet. I was pushing people away. I don't want your help. I'm good. I'm fine. All those words that trigger people. I'm like, stay away from me. My man card, I was afraid to speak out because I was like, I didn't want people to look at me to think I'm weak. Right. I became more emotional too during that time frame. So 2019 rolls around and Channel 9 News wants to do a story on law enforcement officers going through traumatic events and how it affects their lives. Right. So back then our PIO was Fred Jones, and I had just joined the SISM team at this point. Right. So Fred Jones reached out to me and said,
you have to explain what a PIO is.
So PIO is a public
that watch, and they don't know some of these, QRF and stuff like that. They're like, what?
Yeah. Okay. So a PIO is our public information officer. That's the guy that you see talking to the news media all the time. One person or 2 people are designated from every agency to be a PIO, and they basically are the voice of the agency talking. So Fred Jones, he's since retired. He was the PIO back then. He tells me that Channel 9 reached out to the sheriff and them and said, hey, we would like to do a story on Sergeant O'Brien. And if he's willing, the sheriff called Fred and said, hey, if he's up for it, go ahead. So at first I told Fred no. I was like, no, I didn't want to put my personal stuff out there. Didn't want to really share. And I came home and told my wife. My wife was like, man, if you tell your story and you can help one person, reach one person, how would that make you feel? And I was like,
I love your wife, by the way. Really I don't even know her, but seriously.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's been my rock. She's been with me through this ride. It's been 9 years, and we still have like little things that like remind me of things that happened during that time frame. So I have become a stronger person, and I can actually talk about the events without getting emotional. But I decided, I called Fred back the next day and said, all right, I'll do it. So Mrs. Jones from Channel 9, she came and did a ride along with me for during the shift, and we talked. It was emotional. I shared my experience about my EMDR and all this other stuff because I had anxiety every time I went to the gas station, not realizing like why. And then we figured out during treatment that before both shootings, I actually filled up my vehicle prior to going to calls. And that triggered something in my head, like, why do I have anxiety going to the gas station? And it's crazy because your mind, man, it plays all kinds of tricks on you. And like I've learned that over the years is that it's looking for a resolution. It's actually talking to itself up there going, hey, why do you have anxiety, or what's going on? So anyways, fast forward, I did it. I got a lot of good feedback from people, not just in my agency, not just in the state of Florida, but people outside the state had reached out through social media. And they were like, man, you have broken down that wall about talking about your problems, and you're not afraid to share it, which is the biggest thing, because unfortunately in law enforcement, we're more likely to die by our own hand than the bad guys. And it's the reason being is the mental health. And we're afraid to say something because we're like, oh man, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my friends. People are going to think I'm weak. You shouldn't be doing this job. You should quit. And in reality, that's not it. I mean, the military guys come back the same way. They're broken, man. We need to fix these guys because we sent them overseas to fight for our country. Well, guess what? We're the same way. We see stuff that the average citizen won't see at all. I mean, 9 times more likely to see a traumatic event than a civilian would be. And I'm not just talking about shootings and stabbings. I'm talking about suicides, drownings, baby deaths. It's crazy. And people, there's evil people out there. And I talk about evil people now, which leads us to what's going on in our agency the last 2 weeks, is that we had deputies respond to a domestic call that went to a well-being check that ended up losing the life of Brad Link, going into a house to make sure nothing was going on in there because nobody would respond back, and they seen people run into the house. The doors broke down, so they're thinking like, man, is there a home invasion? Now nobody's speaking. And they instantly, when they came into that house, they weren't 5 or 6 feet in there, and they came under fire. And unfortunately, Brad Link lost his life. Deputy Howell got shot, and they had a small street crimes team that were made up of SWAT operators arrived. They suited up. They tried to go in there to rescue Brad. They instantly came under fire. These 2 girls and the dad were firing through walls at the deputies. Like they weren't even seeing some of them, and it was just chaos. I was listening to it on the radio because our CISM team got deployed out. Me as one of the team leaders, I went to the hospital with the chaplain. And the other team leader went to the scene to make sure that she can start coordinating what we needed. And we even had our therapy dogs go to dispatch to the communication center because everything that was transpiring through this thing, there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things that people were hearing that shouldn't be hearing. And it's not that they were being nosy. It was just because it was being broadcasted out, unfortunately. And this is not just an isolated incident for our agency. This is a county-wide incident because people heard fire department EMS were hearing radio traffic going on, and they were hearing evil that night. So one of the daughters in the house got Deputy Link's radio, and she started broadcasting some demonic stuff over the radio, and everybody heard it. You have deputies that were home, off duty, that were listening because they would get phone calls. Hey, we have 2 deputies shot. 3 deputies shot. I mean, it was just chaos going on. And so our CISM team has been deployed pretty much since that night, Friday night. And we have been helping everybody that's been directly involved or affected. And there's still people out there that we need to reach because you have family members that were listening to their family members' radio at the house, and they were hearing stuff going on. And now they're thinking like, oh, my loved one's going back to work. And, this could have happened to any of us. And, and what happened that night, it wouldn't have mattered who stepped into that house. No deputy did anything wrong. Those people had a plan. They set up an ambush and they executed it like a military, the only way that you can ever, and this goes back to our training from in the military, is to suppress an ambush, is to fight through it. But when you are outgunned by people, there's nothing you can do. And even when we brought tools there that could do it, it still was chaos. And then those 3 people that were in the house ended up taking their own lives. So the mom who was outside, who kind of lured them down there and tried to get the neighbors down there to set it up, she's actually in jail now, facing the charges of the murder of Deputy Link and the attempted murder on all the other deputies that they fired on. So yeah, it's been a long roller coaster. And Dr. J has been with us by our side with UCF Restores, helping us, and we're still not done. We got some work to do this week coming up, and then hopefully we're going to wrap it up and get everybody the help that they need. So I'm glad that I'm on the CISM team, because I can share my experience of what I went through to let them know what they're going to go through, and they're not alone. And things that you may not feel it right now. Like I really did not start feeling my PTSD until 2 years to 3 years outside of my shootings when I was diagnosed, because I kind of like, I don't need no help. I got my man card, get out of here. And I wish I didn't. I wish I met people who banged it into my head is that you need to go talk to somebody, because your life has changed. It's never going to be the same. And it's never been the same. And it has been a roller coaster ride at the beginning. And I can honestly say I'm in a better place. And that's why I'm on the CISM team. And that's why I want to help people, because we have to be there for our people,
100%. And thank you for sharing, Lieutenant, and being vulnerable to share your experiences on here, because like your wife said, you're not going to just help one, you're going to help thousands of people by sharing your story. And that's the whole purpose of, why we created this show, so that others can learn and say, wait a minute, and I like that you said, about your man card. Guys, you got to put that aside. You got to get the help you need so that you can be there for yourself first, your family second, and then the rest of your team at work third. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. There's no ego in nightmares.
No. Yeah. And that's another reason why you end up with insomnia, because you don't want to sleep, because you're reliving the dreams. Like one of my biggest nightmares was not being able to get my gun out of the holster. Yeah. Like, because I holstered it. I'm like, and I beat myself up for months. I'm like, why did I put my fucking gun in the holster? Why didn't I leave it out? We still got to clear the house. Like my mind was going to the supervisors, like, let me get everybody out. I got deputies that are coming. I'm going to utilize them. They can go in and clear the house. It didn't dawn on me until and that was the biggest thing that I beat myself up for. Like, why did I put my gun in a holster? And I had to work myself through that. It's like, you did it for a reason, because you had a job to do as a supervisor, and you thought the threat was gone because the 2 guys that were standing out there was like, they ran that way. Nobody said anything at that time that the guy was still in the house, So the other dream, the nightmare that I had was that what happens if I did run with the deputy and chase the other guy down, because it seemed when he crossed the road where he went and left that scene unsecured, and then they try to get the guy, and then they ended up civilians. There's so many things that went through your head of like, what ifs. And one thing I've learned in 18 years of law enforcement, you cannot play the what if game, because you will beat yourself to death in your head for it. So yeah, it's a road. So
thank you for what you do, because you are saving lives, and by sharing your experiences, you're saving more on a different end.
Well, I think it gives him a unique perspective for those that are going through the same type of, right now we have a lot of helplessness. Right. It couldn't be there. It couldn't do anything. There were a lot of variables to this situation. And I think the universal emotion is helplessness. So how do you help them through the helplessness if you haven't walked in their boots?
And credibility is strong. And people, if you don't have credibility, people are not going to trust you. They're not going to open up to you, because they're going to be like, you didn't walk through those boots, So you're right. You're absolutely right. When it comes down to it, is that you have to have some credibility. And I would say the majority of our team members on CISM have been involved in some type of traumatic event that you could take each one and have different stories for each one. And that way you can put this person with this person with this person, and help them, because there's the credibility. They're just not blowing smoke up their butt about it. They're actually, we lived it. Here it is. This is what you're going to go through. And don't.
I do like, yeah, the SISM team is made up of members who are pretty seasoned, and they're very strategic on who they put on. Like somebody straight out of the academy, just like me. I'm not going to put one of my interns straight out of a master's program with you. You will eat her up, you know? And I know that because I've done that.
Yeah.
So I would never, I think it's not the same, but it's the same. So I like the fact that you guys are very diligent in your choices of who you choose for the SISM team, because
we even have civilians on the team.
Experience.
We have jail people who work in the jail to help the jail guys. We have civilians that, if in case something happens with a civilian, that they can, it's not a deputy going up to you in uniform or whatever, because we try not to press that, but we can utilize the civilians that we have on our team. We have therapy dogs on our team. So our team is growing. This experience that we're going through right now is bigger than it's more advanced. So with Dr. J and Chaplain Mike Sachs helping out, UCF Restores, I mean, they have been amazing, because I don't think we could have transitioned or got to the results we're getting to right now, helping people, without that experience being brought on board with us. So and I'll say this because I want to we have had multiple agencies reach out to us, their SISM and peer support group, of like, what do you guys need? And one of the biggest agencies is Osceola County Sheriff's Office. I will throw a huge bone out to them, is that, man, they have been amazing. They've had a major come up. They've had a dispatcher come up. They've had a regular deputy that has been involved in stuff and sharing their experience of their SISM team. And just having them in our core group has been amazing, because people look at it and say, oh, they've lived that, The biggest thing was when we were dealing with the dispatchers, we brought one of their dispatchers up who were on their SISM team, and she was amazing with her experience. So it's like, you can't do it alone. Yeah, we have to fight this fight as a team, and you have to bring in the resources that you need. So yeah, it's been a ride. There's 2 weeks.
Yeah, Fred is actually going to be on our show, so he's going to tell the major Fred.
Amazing guy, man. I'll tell you, he's been amazing. So, and having a major sit on there and come up, and you see that as a command staff person, you're like, oh man, look, this guy has been amazing and has lived it through the system of their agency and brought it up. So yeah, we have a major assigned to us too, so but he is our overall commander of our SISM team, and he's a big proponent of SISM. So, it's been great. It's been great.
Yeah, I think it's important that people see that, see the hierarchy and kind of understand. What's cool is the people on the SISM team have been very communicative and vulnerable. And it's like, dude, I've done this. And let me show you how to walk through this, fire. Yeah. And I think that's very important. But can you explain a little bit about what SISM is? Because we do keep talking about that. I don't think our audience knows what it is. Because Dorothy's going, what is that?
Critical incident stress management it's a team made up of people who have had stress in their life or traumatic events. And then basically what we do is we respond to the scene while it's going on, or might be within 24 to 48 hours that we reach out to the deputies that were experiencing some type of traumatic event. It could be a death of a child. It could be, a kid getting hit by a car. But those deputies are seeing that. We're reaching out and saying, hey, man, these are some of the things you might start seeing. And if you start recognizing these things, reach out and call us. You can talk to us at any time. We tell them we don't care. It could be 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You're working night shift, and all of a sudden something triggers, and you need to talk to somebody. We're there, and we can kind of walk them through some of the emotions and physical things that they might start experiencing. That is normal. It's normal what you're going to go through, and this is what we try to explain to them. And then we tell them that, during a certain period of time, if you start really realizing that these symptoms are still continuing, up past 30 days, you need to go get professional help, because you have other issues going on. And we have Dr. J, we have other doctors on our EAP program that we can reach out to. So trying to walk them through that is the goal of the SISM team. And we get deployed, and the supervisors on the road will call us and say, hey, or our team commander, who is Lieutenant Tom McCain, might get a phone call and say, hey, this just happened. Then he reaches out to me or Lieutenant Stone, and we send people out there, or if they just need a therapy dog or something, to go to them and talk to them. Because the therapy dogs work too. That is an amazing program that the sheriff's office has. And having the support from Sheriff Grinnell all the way down for this has been huge, because it lets the troops on the ground know that we're here and we're supporting them, and that we care about their mental health, not just their physical health, but their mental health too. Because in order to do this job, we need to be as a team, and you need to be healthy, so, and civilians don't really understand that process of like what we suffer. We're humans, we're not robots. We're going to cry. We'll try to joke with each other to try to get that stress out of them. And that's just something that we do, because we see a lot of trauma in our lives, and we have to, when we retire, that doesn't go away. That's still in that file cabinet. That's still there. You still got to address everything you're seeing. And the CISM team is there to help them understand that this is a normal process that you're going to go through. And if we can help you walk through it, we have the resources to put you in the right position, to talk to the right person, to get you the right help. And that's basically what the critical incident stress management team does. So
you raised a good point. And for any civilian out there that has a not great regard for our military or our first responders, I really want you to take a step back and look at what these men and women do in a day. Like, really, there is no way that any of them could have gotten through what you just explained, the 3 instances that you explained. And, as a civilian, you need to check your role. And these men and women are here to do a job, and that is to serve and protect. So, at the end of the day, you're not the one in the hot seat. And as Lieutenant O'Brien has stated in the 3 incidences that he's talked about, like, you're under fire immediately, and you're, not knowing everything, thinking you have all the puzzle pieces. But if somebody doesn't tell you the puzzle piece, like, they're going on instinct training and things like this, years of training and special training that they've had to endure. So I'm glad you brought that up, and, have compassion for these men and women in uniform. And, if you have something to say about it, why don't you just join forces with them and, stand beside them or in front of them instead of behind them.
Well, the challenge I have is, this is America, and, I fought for my country, right? And now I serve the police, and I serve those who serve. And the challenge that I have in all of the therapeutic interventions and all of the, 14, 18 years of education, higher education I've had, I cannot seem to wrap my mind around the fact that people, they have the right to say things like defund the police, or they hate the police, or whatever. But at the same time, if they're in danger, they call 911.
Yeah, who's coming is us,
Yeah. It doesn't, that part doesn't make sense to me.
No, the other one is that, like, really, like, and this happened. My wife experienced this statement, right? Was that this is what they signed up for. This is not what we signed up to help people. We're veterans that we went in, we signed that dotted line. We went and defended our country and our flag.
Right.
We came back, and we want to serve our community and serve the people from the bad people. And it doesn't mean that we signed a dotted line to get killed. It doesn't mean that we signed a dotted line to be traumatized the rest of our lives. That's not what we signed up for. Is it part of the job? Yes, I will say that. We know the risk of having this job, that we might not come home when we leave. We all know that. But it doesn't mean that that's the explanation. Well, that's what they signed up for. Do we have bad apples? Yes. Are we trying to fix our stuff about, like, when they want to defund the police? Absolutely. Have we made mistakes in law enforcement? Absolutely. But so have doctors. So have other people.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So we're human too. We're not perfect. And that's one thing that what bothered me. And then when my wife experienced that, that's what he signed up for. That really literally set me off as, like, that's not what I signed up for. I didn't sign up to be traumatized the rest of my life. And it's good because we tell these kids that are coming in, the younger generation, I say kid because I'm an old man now, of that, hey, you're going to experience trauma. And it's not going to be trauma to your body. It's going to be trauma to your head. You have to stay healthy. You have to go get a hobby. You have to disconnect from this job. When I first started, man, I wanted to listen to the radio all the time and like everything was going on. I wanted to know everything. And as I started getting experience, I was like, man, you need to really unplug from this job. It's like any other job because your mental health is important. You need to exercise. That's a great stress reliever. You need to have a hobby so that you can put your mind somewhere else. You need to leave the job at the car. When you come into the house, you can share and you should share with your family members, your wife, your kids, or your husband, and everything else that's going on. You don't have to get in depth, but it's important to them to know what you experienced that day so they understand what you're going through and the mood that you're in. Because if you don't do that, they think they did something wrong. And then there's the friction. So being in law enforcement is different. And the same thing with firefighting and EMS. They see some crazy stuff. Nurses in the ER and the trauma. You know what I mean? It's all the way across. It's not just law enforcement. I mean, anybody that is serving the public as a public service person is going to experience trauma, and they need the help for the mental health side of it too. And not just us. This goes to military people too. And it doesn't have to be the guy that's in the, we used to joke around our supply clerks and used to call them reps and joke with them. Like, you don't come out when we have to go do something. And as the Seabees, we learn to fight because when we're building stuff overseas, we're defending ourselves. We don't always have the Marines there. So that was a good thing about me. I was like, oh man, I kind of got I fired pretty much every rifle, machine gun, the Mark 19, I was on a mortar crew. I mean, like I got to experience all that stuff in the Seabees, and I was like, man, this is amazing, man. Go over there and defend my country, but I get to actually play with all these toys, and yeah, it's great. You come out into the civilian world and you become a cop and you want to serve the public. I did. I became the reason why I was recruited into the bomb squad. I met a couple of bomb guys is my electrical background. They were like, dude, that is one of the biggest things in explosives is understanding electrical circuits.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
for me, I was like, oh yeah, and I made a promise to my wife. I was like, oh, I won't join the SWAT team, and then what ended up happening, I know it's a real quick story. As we started advancing, they were putting EOD guys into the stack of SWAT guys. But in order to do that, you had to learn their techniques and their training. So a couple of us volunteered. We went through SWAT school and man, I like best shape. I thought I was in good shape when I was in K-9 because that dog ran my butt off. When I went through SWAT school, man, it was amazing training. And I will say that training there saved my life in Stucky Loop. I will never forget that because I did not hesitate. Everything came back. It was just, everything was emotion. But yeah, I did 6 years on the SWAT team and I did, I was like 12 or 13 years on bomb before I started ranking up and having more responsibilities. And I decided to step back from the risks that I was taking, listening to my wife going, man, you do all these crazy things. What about you? And I was like, you know what? This is a young man's game kind of thing. I'm getting up there. And, my goal was to get promoted to lieutenant. And I did. At the time I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm bowing out. I'm done. I enjoyed the adrenaline rushes. I enjoyed the call outs. I enjoyed the training. And now as the lieutenant of the SRD unit, I've actually brought, with the help of other people, not just me, but we developed a training program and we spend a lot of time on the range because the threat of a school shooting is huge, and this country, it's no longer of, well, if it happens, it's not going to be a matter of if, it's when. I mean, we've had some close calls here in Lake County itself, not just the Tavares Middle School shooting, but we had an incident that happened at Lake Mineola High. We had an incident that happened at Eustis High School with a gun and the deputy stopped it. So like for me, like bringing this training into these SRDs and giving them advanced training, because that's my biggest thing is like, if you have training, you can fall back on it and kind of rely on it when the shit hits the fan, because
absolutely
you're going to fight the way you train. And that's one thing that we do for that. So that's my little nitpick of the whole thing.
That's awesome. I love that. But I also know that you talk about, like letting your man card go and being vulnerable and things like that. And that's kind of why I check in with you guys and ask you, you need a tune up, because they're like, hey, I'm going to see Doc, I'm getting my tune up. And people totally understand what that means. And it's not, oh, you're, what a sad little boy, and then they start getting picked on. They're
Right.
like, okay, well, let me know when you get back. It's not as, their stigma has been reduced significantly there, which is wonderful.
It has. And I say that sometimes when I'm talking to people, I'm like, dude, you got to check your man card, or put your girl card in your pocket or your purse, however you want to do it. But
yeah,
you don't have to be the whole time. You can be vulnerable. And I've learned that, being emotional. Yeah, man, I can get emotional, man. This past 2 weeks, listen to some of the stories that people are going through, and I can relate and heartbroken because I know what they're going through. And how do you not, you start choking up, and you're like hearing the bravery that these guys did trying to go into that house and under fire. And I'm like, and what was said, and I'm like, holy cow, man, those guys are warriors, they're heroes. And then you hear the other side of it, and you're like, man, I can relate why you're not sleeping, why you're doing all this stuff. And it's,
that's what I love about Tim too, is he gets vulnerable. He stands right there. He doesn't move. He doesn't walk away. Yeah. He doesn't wipe his eyes. Nope. He stands there.
Nope.
And that power and that vulnerability allowed the space for other people to mirror that and kind of work through their own stuff. What I love is the peer support. There's only one of me. I know I have a team, but realistically, if you need somebody in the moment, like these guys are in the office next to you, or they're in the car next to you. And that's what I love about peer support. I know a lot of therapists don't care for it, but I don't believe that they're doing anything out of their, scope of practice, so to speak.
Nope. We're only sharing experiences to know that this is what you're going to go. And guess what? It's normal.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with it. And that's what we share with them. And for the peer support, we're not therapists or nothing. Listen, that if I can't do something for somebody, the first person I'm calling is the experts, right? And that firsthand. Like you've checked up on every one of us the last 2 weeks. And for me, it's been amazing because as the weeks have gone by, this last 2 weeks, like I double checking every day and making sure that I'm good, and I've shared it with the SWAT guys. And I've actually had to reach out to my old therapist just to do a checkup and hey, this is what's going on, because I made him a promise that I would, if anything ever happened, I would not let it compound and blow up and all the work that I've done be reset. I would never want to go back down there. I am on a mindset that I will never go back to that hole that I was in. I will never go back there. I made my wife a promise. I made myself a promise that I would never go back to that hole. And I will reach out. I will cry. I will hug somebody. And I stand there emotional in front of SWAT guys.
And you do.
So
I've seen you.
So I just want to make one observation here, because we've had chiefs on here. We've had, and there is still, and I know I talk about the civilians now. I'm going to talk about the inside of the police force. There are still some departments out there that are like, suck it up, man up, whatever the thing is. And they don't see the value in getting their men and women help. So I'm here today. This is a perfect example of Lieutenant O'Brien sharing his story, saying, wait a minute, this has helped me. This is, made me not only a better man, but a better police officer for getting the help that he needed. So for those departments that are still the old school, there's still some that exist. I know they're out there, and I know they're doing a great job. And a lot of the other ones are saying, okay, we're chucking the old rules aside, the old school rules aside. But this is a perfect example by no, wait a minute, it's okay to actually see that, wait a minute, maybe our men and women do need help. That we don't want them, being triggered at the scene and then losing completely. Let's get them the help they need while they're still on the job, before anything can become tragic. So I just want to point that out there too. Because, I'm all about helping everybody. And I had to bring that to light. So And we got to wrap this up. We're going to have a lieutenant come back for a second episode, I'm sure, because I mean, there's so much more we could talk about. But my question,
I just want to say one last thing before you ask them the question. With regard to tune-ups, like the challenge for me, and the reason I use that and coin that phrase, and I want this on this episode, is because when you go, I'm taking my car in for a tune-up, nobody bats an eye. You get your oil filter changed for, for $17.26 or whatever it costs, right? And you change your oil filter. What is an hour of your week to change your oil filter talking to somebody?
Right. Yeah.
So reducing that stigma just by calling it a tune-up, I found to be pretty powerful.
Yeah, you don't want it to
wanted
break.
to add that.
Well, here in Canada, it's $150 to do your oil change in your tune-up. So there you go. Yeah, welcome to Canada. All right, but yes, go get your tune-up. Go get your tune-up. So Tim, what is the one thing that no one knows about you?
Ooh. He's pretty open.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's something I would have to ask my wife and get back with you on that part. I don't know, because I'm pretty open about what goes on. I'm a chocoholic. I'm a closet chocoholic. People don't know that, but yeah, I have a certain chocolate that I like. That's
what is it?
Favorite. Peppermint patties. Love peppermint patties, especially frozen peppermint patties. My wife takes care of me, makes sure that every once in a while there's some hidden in the freezer for me. So that's my go-to. I mean, people know that who doesn't eat donuts, right? Everybody eats donuts. I eat donuts.
I sure do not. I do not.
Yeah. Well, when you come down from Canada, if that's where you are, you need to go to Donut King or King's Donuts and have one of their amazing donuts. And I guarantee you that will change your life. You'll have
that is true. They are epic. Do you want to share the Moist story or not?
No. I do not.
Okay.
My wife would
story though.
Oh yes, I forgot about that. What is that about, boys?
We'll talk about it later.
No,
that's all good.
Yeah.
All right,
pretty amazing. He's got lots of stories though. Tim is pretty popular within the agency. Everybody knows who he is, and he is the go-to guy. And I just think it because he's walked through, he's fought the Loch Ness monster, so to speak, of the agency. So, thank you so much, sir, for all that you do. And thank you for bringing me in. It is an honor to serve you guys.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story. And I can't thank you enough for what you have done for not just me, but for the agency in the last 2 weeks. I tip my hat off to you. You're amazing. We couldn't have done it without yours and Chaplain Sachs's help. It's just, I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
And before we completely wrap this up, Dr. Royster, can you please share with us what Semper Modus does?
Sure. So I created a private practice. We now have 12 practitioners, and I believe we're in 11 states. Just basically means Semper Modus is a military term because it's Latin, right? So it means it's always moving forward in mental health and recovery. So what it does is it reflects our commitment to guiding individuals toward mental and emotional well-being. I have a team of dedicated people. They are chomped at the bit to help the officers and their families during this time. I think I have 3 of them that cleared their schedule to help the kiddos and the spouses of the individuals and the individuals and the officers. Because that fear is real, being terrified that your husband or wife is going back to work after such a traumatic event and the whole county suffered. I think several counties heard about this and they've been reaching out. I mean, even people in Virginia, they're calling me, asking me if I'm okay. And I'm like, wait, what? I have a therapist. It's all good.
So I did ask her when her tune-up is. I did ask her that question.
Yes. Next Wednesday. So they offer personalized and innovative therapeutic solutions. We focus, and I think that's why we're more geared toward officers, their families, military, their families, because we've all walked in their boots. I have one from every branch now, which is pretty exciting. And I have law enforcement officers, corrections officers, firemen, just people that are willing to stand in the gap because they have served themselves and they want to bring people forward with their education and their interventions. We very much are a move the needle company. If you want to sit in your stuff, that's fine. I have a therapist for you. I'm not it. But in that situation, like, we are here to serve you because you mean so much to us.
And where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah.
Where can people get a hold of you?
Oh, Semper Modus LLC .com.
There we go. All right, guys. Thank you for both of you for what you do, how you help people whom you serve. Lieutenant O'Brien, it's been an honor and a privilege to meet you. And I can't wait. We'll have to have you back on for part 2 some later down the road. Because I feel that there's a lot more that you could help other people with. So, but thank you for this, and thank you for your service. And remember, guys, as always, stay safe, be kind to others, and watch us next week for another amazing story of their journey in boots.